Now our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Whit in Boston, Massachusetts. Jim, what are your thoughts on Kamala?
Kamala. Wait a minute, I'll say it like Michael St. John did. Kamala, the Ugandan giant. That was one of the greatest gimmicks of all time. And Kamala himself was a great guy and deserved that success. We've told the story before, but I'll gloss over the high points. Sugar Bear Harris was a rotten wrestler. He was a big guy and was a rotten wrestler. And he was in the business for a few years and worked mostly, the outlaw group for the Culkins in Mississippi, down there with Troy Hippie Graham, soon to become the Dream Machine, and the Freebirds when they were teenagers. And, he'd had a couple of spots in different places. And finally, they used him one night in Memphis because he was living in the Memphis area. He was from Mississippi, and he needed a job. And Jerry Jarrett booked him, and because look at that big guy there, and then he got the report. According to Jerry, he got the report. I don't know if it was Eddie Marlin or Jerry Lawler, whoever said, this guy looks like he's never wrestled before. He just the shits. But Jarrett and Lawler, they remembered him. They knew who he was, and they thought of something. Well, what if we make a gimmick out of a guy that never has wrestled before? Because look how big he is, and he's impressive, and he's a nice guy. So they came up with the idea of Kamala, the Ugandan giant, that not Jimmy Hart, the area manager, but J.J. Dillon from Florida, a top manager in the magazine, somebody the people didn't know well there in Memphis, would sign this Ugandan savage and bring him to the United States as King Kong, right? And Lawler fucking every night before the goddamn match, Lawler, it became a rib after a while because Lawler did the paint job on Kamala. All the moons and the stars and the fucking, the whole native paint. And it got to be quite fucking, time consuming, but Lawler'd paint him up. They had Buddy Wayne put the Friday outfit, the beekeeper outfit on to be his handler because JJ only made the big towns flying up from Florida. And that fucking mask, and he was goddamn fearsome. And they did the video in Jerry Jarrett's backyard in Hendersonville of Kamala coming out of the jungle. And they did the thing they did with Zulu, where they fucking started on his feet and panned all the way up and saw that he was a giant, 6'6", 340 pounds. Kamala, wilder than the beasts of the jungle, was the voiceover. And it worked. And because the first night in, he wrestles Jerry Lawler for the Southern title and beats Lawler clean in the fucking middle. And once he beat Lawler, the people are, holy shit, and flat, not a fuck, as I recall. Then, by reverse booking, they started him the next week with Bobby Fulton. He started with the lowest guy on the totem pole, and then he went from Bobby Fulton to Roy Rogers, then to Stan Lane, then to Steve Kern, then to Dutch Mantell, then to Bill Dundee, and beat every single babyface on the roster to the rematch with Lawler, and then Lawler beat him. And through that summer, they'd had 3 months of nothing but business with Kamala, but once that they beat him, then they fucking sent him to Mid-South Wrestling because they knew also the part of the attraction was that you can't beat this guy. Once you beat him and they've seen it, then they know he can be beat. Then that takes something off of it. So they created a gimmick with a guy that needed a job, that was a nice guy, but that was rotten in his previous presentation, and fucking built a main event fucking gimmick and a guy by using a top manager and by using all the other talent that was over and by the proper booking of shocking the people first and then giving him a bunch of wins to make him look invincible, and then Lawler finally gets even, and then send him down to a bigger territory where he can do the same thing and he's got more people to work with. And then you saw Andre and Kamala and fucking, all of the Mid-South guys in Kamala. And he got a great run there and then did he go from there straight to Dallas, right?
Yeah, he had a great run in Mid-South. Mid-South may actually be his best run in terms of the way he was used because they had him with the top guys. He body slammed Andre the Giant on Mid-South TV, not even in like an arena show, on TV at the Irish Big Hill Boys Club. He just slammed Andre the Giant, setting up those series of matches. And then he went to Dallas, where he was used on top right away.
Yeah, so, you know, you took a guy, same guy, he had never drawn a dime, change the look, change the presentation, and book him into being a star. And as long as he's visually impressive and then can carry it off, then it made his career. And then he goes from Dallas, then he's, you know, he's on Vince's radar and he gets a run up there. And, you know, it was one of the great gimmicks of all time, and nobody else could have done it like that because he embraced it. And the fucking, you know, the stomach slap and everything. And I always called him Ooga Booga. Every time I say, hello, Ooga Booga, he go, Ooga Booga. You know, he's just a great guy.
Do you think it's overstated that he couldn't wrestle? That's why they gave him the gimmick. I mean, he'd wrestled in England.
No.
Really? Because he'd been in like World of Sport and stuff.
I don't care. I saw Sugar Bear Harris. He was in England he couldn't do any of that World of Sport shit. Because he was a 6'6", 340-pound black American guy that looked fucking huge and impressive, but he wasn't doing all that shit with them. They were doing his shit. They were doing big man shit. You ought to say, and that was one of the things they said. It looked like he's never thrown a punch before because he could knock you out as a man for real, but he couldn't throw a working punch. So that's why they say Kamala, you know, fucking man-eating cannibals don't throw punches. They throw chops. Everybody knows that. And he started doing the Baba chops, and that worked. And he'd do this shit where the first time he went to cover a guy, he covered the guy while the guy was laying on his stomach because he didn't understand the principle. And it fucking worked. But no, there was no fucking way that Sugar Bear Harris would have ever been a top wrestler in any sizable territory.